Have you ever been to the doctor and they haven't really listened to your symptoms, only looked at the test results? Are you frustrated with your chronic pain, and though you're using heating pads or taking hot baths, so on, you're finding it's just temporary relief? Would you like to hear about an alternative theory to the cause of your pain? If you answered yes to any or all of these questions, then listen into what physical therapist Dr. Mitchell Yass has to say this week on Chronically Living. I'm Kelsey Harris, chronic illness warrior and psychotherapist. On Chronically Living and How to Make the Most of It, we're providing tangible ways to improve the well-being of Spoonies. So get ready to make the most out of your life, even with that pesky chronic illness.
My name is Mitchell Yaas. I have a doctorate in physical therapy. That's the basis of my credential. I live in Jacksonville, Florida, but the thing that I have done is develop a method to properly diagnose and treat pain and other symptoms by interpreting the body's presentation of symptoms, which is why that tissue in distress creates those symptoms, to make you aware of which tissue it is. And once you know what tissue it is, you resolve the distress of it. It no longer has to elicit your symptoms, and you're pain-free and fully functional. So my first career, I was a project manager in construction. I have a bachelor's of building construction from the University of Florida. I did it for 5 years, and it just wasn't satisfying. I didn't see myself having a future in it. 3-4 years prior to me quitting, calling it quits in there, I had started lifting weights. And I kind of took a high school physics course and started applying physics to weightlifting. And it allowed me over a series of years to put on, over 4 years, I put 40 pounds of muscle on. And it was this great job, this great sideline thing that I was doing. As I quit construction, my parents mentioned that some of their friends' kids had been physical therapists. And I literally had never even heard of it. So I found out what was required, and it turns out all I needed was 6 prerequisites. I took that over a 1.5 years period of time at a community college, and I then got into physical therapy school. And basically what happened was, very quickly into it, I started to recognize I was 30 years old, so I wasn't an 18-year-old kid, and had a lot of life experience and really kind of understood logic. And what they were saying just wasn't making sense. So I said, you know what? I'll just pass the courses, get through the curriculum, and then I'll try to figure it out as I begin to practice therapy. And that's kind of the process that developed, and that's how the whole thing began.
Part of physical therapy is, of course, working with people who are in pain. This can range from acute pain from an accident to chronic pain. I was interested in why Mitchell decided to focus on the chronic pain portion.
A big part of my whole life was always the sense that I always wanted to have my own business. It was always there from the time I was a kid. There was a fascination with the idea of being in charge and controlling things. And so I thought that I was going to have my own construction company. And when that didn't work out and I got into physical therapy, the primary mechanism for someone to have their own business was an outpatient facility. You're going to do outpatient therapy. You're not going to do stroke patients or amputees or things like that. It's going to be outpatient. And most of what's treated in outpatient was pain. That's why most people are going for outpatient treatment. So it just was a natural inclination. I worked for a guy for 1.5 years. And right after that, I opened my facility and got instant recognition for my diagnostic capacity. And it just blew up. And so it just turned out that because the area that I was treating was primarily pain, I entrenched myself in trying to understand the old school version of pain before there were diagnostic tests, which was like, what is pain? Why does a tissue elicit pain? How can you figure out what tissue that is? And that became really the essence of everything I wanted to do. And I just went on the process of understanding it.
Okay, so what was it about what Mitchell was being trained on in physical therapy school that didn't make sense to him? And how does this tie into his diagnostic method and treatment of chronic pain?
So the thrust of when it comes to the issue of pain in terms of establishing a diagnosis since the mid to late 1980s was the use of the MRI to identify a tissue that supposedly was the tissue creating symptoms. And so a classic example of what would happen, I'm a student, and it turns out the last affiliation I had was with the guy who was the therapist for the New York Islanders hockey team. I was in New York, and I was 30 years old. I was pretty brash, pretty aggressive, and the guy liked that. So he was going to hire me within 2 weeks of my affiliation. He said, I'm going to hire you right after. I love you. You are perfect for what we do. It's a sports-oriented place, lots of people coming in. And so the concept was that someone would come in, let's say they had pain in the knee area, and they would get an MRI, and it would say they have a torn meniscus. So that's what they were coming for therapy for. And I still am not quite sure why every person who graduates, who begins to treat people, wouldn't want to ask this question. But it was the first question that came to my mind. Could you just tell me where your pain is? I just asked this to me, the most logical. Could you just tell me, point to where your pain is? And so what would happen is they point to where their pain is, and it was in the knee region, but it wasn't where the meniscus exists. And so I was left to say, uh-oh, they've got pain and it's not from the meniscus. What is it? And so I started doing a process of trying to determine things like, well, let me feel for where they're having their pain. What is that tissue that I'm touching? And it would turn out it's a muscle. And I'd say, okay, well, if it's a muscle, let me muscle test it and see. And it would be weak. Let me flexibility test it. It would be short. Let me see them try to stand or do activities on it, and they wouldn't be able to. And I'd suddenly come to the realization, oh my God, their pain is just a strained hamstring. So I do a little massage, I do some strengthening, and within 2 to 3 treatments, the person's pain-free. And there was this massive quandary that begins to develop in me. I am being told that this person's pain is being caused by something found on an MRI, and the presentation of their symptoms is saying that's not right. What do you do about that? And so the most logical thing to me was, well, if the symptoms are real, those are what's being created by the tissue in distress, that should be what you treat. Any place from head to toe. I started really focusing on the symptoms, asking the person questions about it, touching, trying to figure out the tissue. And ultimately, it came down to a simple question. Is it a structural element, which needs surgery, or is it muscle? And within a very short period of time, I established that more than 98% of cases of all pain being experienced, the cause is muscle.
Wait, it's muscle? That often? Because that's not what most of us with pain issues are told, regardless of what is causing our pain. Let's hear a bit more.
I've actually established the 4 primary mechanisms by which muscle can create pain. And you would see that if someone's having pain, this actually, their situation fits into this. So number 1, you could have pain, the muscle strains, and it elicits pain in the muscle. Okay, pain in the upper trap region. It's your strained levator scapula. Okay, it's a muscle. You just have to understand that that muscle works with other muscles to perform activity. So you have to figure out which other muscles may have strained to cause that muscle to strain and elicit pain. So you just strengthen muscles as a group, make sure things work functionally, you resolve that pain. That's kind of the most obvious one. This is where people really start to say, I would have never thought that could be from muscle. So let's say you're having pain around your kneecap, right? The pain is at your joint around your kneecap. You would then get an MRI to find some structural variation, and it would be asserted that the structure of the knee joint is creating the pain. What you have to understand is that the position of the kneecap in the knee joint is controlled by the quadriceps muscle, the muscle that sits at the front of the thigh. It's connected to your kneecap. So let's say there was a muscular deficit. Let's say that the quad got too strong in relationship to the hamstring, the back thigh muscle. Well, if it shortens because of its attachment to the kneecap, it's going to pull up on it excessively. So when you bend your knee, instead of the kneecap gliding in the joint, it's compressed in the joint. That would elicit pain at the knee joint. The cause, though, is muscular. So pain at a joint, in almost all cases, has nothing to do with the structure of the joint. It's based on weakness or imbalance of muscle that attaches to the joint causing a misalignment of the joint surfaces. They're rubbing in a way they shouldn't. That's why you have joint region pain, a muscular cause. Next, we have muscle can refer symptoms. Everybody thinks only nerves can refer symptoms. Well, muscles can. How would you know that for sure? Well, what's the symptom of a heart attack? Pain at the chest and the left arm. Is there anything wrong with your left arm? No. The symptom at the left arm is literally coming from the heart itself. It's being referred from the muscle. So muscles can refer symptoms. The heart is a muscle. So the person who's having numbness when they sleep on their side in their hand, the numbness is actually referred from a part of the rotator cuff, which attaches from the shoulder blade to the arm. Because it's weak, the arm bone gets drawn forward inappropriately, overstretching that muscle, and it causes it to ignite a symptom, numbness in the hand. So just because you have numbness doesn't mean you should immediately get a cervical spine MRI, find a herniated disc, and assume it's that. Muscle can refer symptoms. Finally, the biggest, muscle can strain and impinge on a nerve. That is sciatica. Sciatica has nothing to do with the lumbar spine, nothing. It is a hip dysfunction issue where a muscle in the butt actually strains due to weakness of another muscle relating to hip function, and that muscle thickens and impinges on the sciatic nerve. So you're going to get a neurological symptom, pain from the butt down the back of the leg to the foot, but it is caused by a muscle impinging on the nerve. There's nothing structurally wrong with the sciatic nerve. So if I fix the muscular deficit, I stop the muscle from impinging on the nerve, I stop the experience of the neurological symptom. When you look at those four mechanisms, you would see that accounts for a person could walk in my door and I'm going to tell you one of those four mechanisms are what are creating their symptoms in over 98% of cases.
I asked this question at the start of the show. Have you ever been to the doctor and they haven't really listened to your symptoms, only looked at the test results, whether those come from blood work or an MRI or an X-ray or whatever? I have. So this is really interesting.
This was the 1950s or the 1960s. If people are old enough, I'm old enough to remember the show like Marcus Welby, those doctor shows where you would walk in and the guy would say, like, where's your pain? Show me what makes it happen. And let me touch you and test you and feel you. And then came diagnostic testing, the MRI. And it became the gold standard. By the way, kind of important little detail, the MRI wasn't invented to identify the cause of pain. It was invented to identify tumors in the brain. That's what its original intent was. How it shifted to being used to identify the cause of pain, that's a great mystery, and I would love that to be investigated because there were no studies done at the time to say, wow, there is this direct correlation between structural variations and pain. In fact, by 1994, the first studies on people with no back pain showed 70% of people who have no back pain have herniated or bulging discs. 70%. Okay. So it became the gold standard. And for whatever the reason, that's it. So you're going 40 years now forward, and it doesn't really matter the specialist you go to. The standard of care is to say, where's your pain? Okay, here's a prescription, get an MRI. We'll discuss the results when you get them. And all determinations about what's causing your pain are based on that MRI. The fact is, and this is another kind of big issue to understand, is that this is known as correlative theory or junk science. It simply says that if you have pain and a structural variation is identified at the time of your pain, I will assert that it is the cause of your pain. Well, I could show you that's kind of a fallacy because the MRI would show that you have two elbows at the time you have pain. I can show you the picture of your two elbows. You have two elbows, you do, when you have pain. So why can't I say having two elbows is the cause of your pain and I'll remove your elbows? I can do that, right? The point to understand is that if it is the cause of pain, then what would you expect for people who don't have pain? Then they shouldn't have herniated discs. Well, it turns out studies have shown as many people without pain in the same percentages have the same structural variations as those in pain.
Yeah, interesting. What about the people who go in for an MRI and it shows nothing, which
Right.
happens so often?
Right. I mean, just think about what you're saying, how frustrating that is to the individual because you went to the doctor. The doctor's got to say something. He's got to give you something, right? You're paying for the visit. So just imagine how difficult it is for that doctor when nothing shows up. Ergo, fibromyalgia,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
All of these types of disease. Oh, you have something, something, something syndrome, right? That's what those diagnoses are there for. It's for when I can't provide a structure as the cause of your pain, but I still got to give you a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to fall into that. What is a diagnosis? I really want people to understand this. This is really, really important stuff. What is the purpose of a diagnosis? The purpose of the diagnosis is the recognition that a tissue is in distress, creating your symptoms. So the diagnosis is there has to be a tissue. You have a kidney stone.
Mm-hmm.
You have pneumonia of the lung. You have a mitral valve prolapse of the heart. You got to identify a tissue. And the second part of the diagnosis must be that the symptoms being experienced must be the same symptoms that identified structural variation would create if it was in distress.
Right.
You need those two things to have a proper diagnosis. So if you're getting a diagnosis like people get in car accidents all the time and they get whiplash. Now, I think I know anatomy pretty well. I don't think there's a tissue named whiplash. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure. So I can't accept that as a diagnosis. But it happens all the time. And people are treated for the next 20 years under the diagnosis whiplash.
Mm.
You must see the fallacy, the danger in that diagnosis. What's the tissue in distress so I could address the distress of that tissue, which is the only way I'm ever going to stop the tissue from creating your symptoms. That type of diagnosis kind of allows the person to stay in treatment forever and ever and ever. So if you want to protect yourself, if you really want to take control of your symptoms, your ability to resolve your symptoms, start being proactive, start taking control of what's happening to you and understand that you got to get a diagnosis before you can get any treatment that's going to resolve your symptoms. And that diagnosis must be a tissue and must be a tissue that would create symptoms that are exactly the symptoms you're experiencing. If you have that, you have a good diagnosis. What does the Yass Method do? It interprets the body's presentation of symptoms to identify what tissue's in distress. In 98% of cases, it's muscle. And the symptoms aren't just pain. It could be altered posture, movement, loss of range of motion, a variety of things. But I'm interpreting what the body's telling me because that tissue is so desperately trying to get help. Mm-hmm. That's the way the body works. If a tissue's in distress, it calls out to you to say, please help me, fix me. I'm going to try to let you know it's me by showing you these specific symptoms. Try to interpret them. That's what this is.
Okay, let's pause for a moment of catch up. If you listened to the episode with Sam Bisnick, you might remember that he said something similar about MRIs. It seems like doctors overly rely on MRI results, even though the results may or may not be showing the cause of the problems we're experiencing. This is pretty interesting. The second thing I wanted to mention was when Dr. Yass mentioned correlative research. So correlations are important because they show an association between A and B. The problem is that they don't show cause and effect. Is A causing B? Or is B causing A? Or is there a C that's also implicated in causing A and or B? This is why when correlations are found, usually additional research is needed to make a determination of cause and effect, if at all possible.
The essence of that is understanding the bigger picture of why would a muscle go in distress. Mm-hmm. And that is because we live in a gravitational environment. So there's always a force being applied down on us. So every activity we do have to push up against that force. And so the muscles have to create an equivalent force, all the muscles trying to perform the activity. If certain muscles can create that force, then they're going to strain and elicit symptoms. So the only real way to resolve muscular causes of pain are by identifying the muscles that do not have the appropriate force output and then causing them to adapt to greater and greater resistances through a use of progressive resistance. It could be resistance bands, dumbbells, barbells, machines, whatever mechanism you have to create resistance. Ultimately, you just have to make those muscles adapt to greater and greater resistances until their force output is greater than the force requirements of your activities. And you at that point are pain-free and fully functional. And as long as you sustain the exercises, you are now preventing yourself from ever having those symptoms again.
Okay, so earlier Dr. Yass mentioned when you sleep on your arm and it becomes numb, which is something that happens to me all the time. But how can I go about fixing this?
In my mind, the first thing is to become more willing to recognize that maybe the cause is muscular, right? You've just gotten a light bulb moment. You now know that that's muscular. So granted, yeah, you would probably have to go to someone like me and have one session with me to figure out which muscles they are. But the great news about my method is that it can be done through Zoom session and the sessions are videotaped. This is, to me, the most important thing about the way this works. So I videotape our session. I show you which exercise to do. You perform the exercises under my supervision. Then that videotape is sent to you. So now you use that. You do your exercises only 3 times a week. It's not 7 days a week. No one should strengthen 7 days a week. It's 3 times a week. You do the right exercises, progression resistance, and you utilize that to make sure. It's almost like I'm with you every time you're going to do the exercise because you're utilizing the tape that I showed you what to do, and I confirmed that you doing it on the tape, you're doing it correctly. So that would be the mechanism by which you would be able to resolve your symptoms and achieve full function. I wish there was a magic answer, like I could say, just do these 3 exercises. You know, everyone with neck pain will get rid of it. It doesn't work like that. The body is a group of muscles working synergistically, and each person can have a certain breakdown of a couple of muscles that are specific to their situation. So there always has to be that initial evaluation to confirm which particular muscles are involved in creating your symptoms. If you strengthen the wrong muscles, you will certainly not resolve the distress of the ones responsible for your symptoms, but you may also be heightening the problem. So I really feel like the best message I can give people is to be more open to the idea that maybe your pain is muscular, that all that stuff you're being told by the quote unquote medical establishment is coming from a place where they have one train of thought, right? If you've been through the medical establishment, you know that they primarily think that the answer can be found through the MRI, diagnostic testing. You know how you said that you're having that numbness from sleeping on your shoulder and we're assuming it's muscular? So if I took an MRI of your shoulder, would that muscular deficit show up?
No.
But let's say that a little arthritis in your shoulder showed up. What do you think they're going to treat?
Yeah,
they're going to treat that arthritis. And the key is that that muscular deficit that's there stays there. Yeah. No matter how much they treat that arthritis, that's going to stay there until you identify it and resolve it. So if someone has pain somewhere and they take a hot shower and the pain goes away, that's a red flag that you have a muscular deficit. If you get massages, you have neck pain or migraine headaches, and you get a massage and the pain goes away, that's a red flag that your pain is muscular. If you find that doing activity brings on your symptoms, that's a red flag that your problem is muscular. If I could just get people to be a little more open to that idea, and that I know it's terrible to think that there's this one guy out there, crazy guy, who seems to have figured this out and everybody else is saying something else. But a lot of times the crazy guy is the right guy. And all I'm asking anyone to do is never to follow what I say because I say it. I want you to listen to it. And if it makes sense, follow it. And that's all I ever ask from anybody. I come on this podcast because I want to provide information. I want people to hear what I have to say. It's clearly an alternative to pretty much anything, But if it's based on logic, how could it be disputed? Why would you not be at least willing to give it the shot when what they're offering is kind of scary? Shots, epidural nerve blocks, one of the big ones out there now, radio frequency ablation. That's cauterizing your nerves, right? Obviously, multiple surgeries and things like that. Why not look at this and say to myself, I don't know, man, maybe I don't know if it's right. I don't know if it's wrong, but at least the guy sounds like he's making sense. And what he's talking about kind of sounds similar to my situation. It's worth the investigation.
I mean, I don't know about all of you, but at least some of this makes sense to me. I know that I feel better after massages, hot baths, using heating pads, and I've heard many other people with chronic pain, including pain associated with chronic illnesses, say that they also use these things to help with their pain. In that case, it does sound like at least part of the pain must be muscular. For one of Dr. Yass's client success stories, head on over to Patreon. Become a patron of Chronically Living for only $5 a month and get bonus content for each episode of the podcast, as well as some other great perks. So is there anything else we should know about the Yass Method?
So the easiest way to get it is just to go to my website, Live Without Pains, it's plural, livewithoutpains.com. And if you want to put /sessions, you'll get to the page which shows you about the Zoom sessions. I think to me, that's the most important thing to understand. I live in Jacksonville, Florida. You don't have to come here for this. I have been doing Zoom sessions before there was even Zoom. I was doing them when there was only Skype because for various reasons, I've had awareness made of me around the world. And so I've been doing this for a pretty long time. It's a highly effective manner. The success rate is extremely high. And the great news is you can schedule the sessions at a day and time when it's comfortable for you. And we just go through. And as I said, they're videotaped. And in terms of equipment, you need a resistance band and a chair. For under $10 of expense, I can get you out of pain and pain-free. If you want to, if it sounds like maybe this is something you're interested in, you could always email me at my email address, which is drmitch@mitchlyass.com, Dr. Mitch at mitchelyass.com. I'll always answer. Don't hesitate and think I'm not going to respond. I do everything in my power to respond to every person that seeks my help. I think it's an ethical and moral responsibility. So I think those are the two big things. You can reach me by email, or if you want to make an appointment, go for it. You will see the results that I speak of. The success rate I get is very, very high into the upper 90s.
Okay, so let's do our lightning round questions.
Yes.
All right, so what are the top 5 songs that describe your life?
All right, so the number one is by Disturbed, called Indestructible. And that is because I think I have to be that way. It is me against the system. And that's what the song mentions, is that you got to be indestructible. You can't be taken down. No matter what it takes, you keep getting that message out there. You keep getting that method known. People are going to get a benefit of it, and you're going to change the world. So I definitely think I am and want to be indestructible. The next one is Van Halen, Right Now. And that's actually not a song for me. It's my message to every single person in the world suffering from chronic pain. You could get out of pain right now. You simply need the right diagnosis. You got to figure out what tissue it is. If it's muscle, real easy. Some exercise, understanding how to progress resistance, you can get out of pain starting right now. Next is Frank Sinatra, My Way. Well, I mean, I don't know how anyone could say that I don't do what I do my way. It's clearly my way. I made it up after I got out of school. So I think that one's pretty reasonable. Now, from a personal experience, I Can See Clearly Now by Johnny Nash. And that actually has to do with all the craziness I've gone through over these almost 3 decades. I have actually found enlightenment personally. I have been able to now detach myself as a person from this method, and I see life extremely clearly. I live in a fully enlightened, as close to enlightened as I can get. I live for the moment. I find joy in everything I do. Life is simply there to relish every moment and do everything in your power to be able to achieve that. So I could see clearly. And then the result of that is Three Dog Night, joy to the world.
That is
That's
amazing.
all I'm trying to do is bring joy to the world, one person at a time. That's I think I get the greatest satisfaction out of doing, and I love it, and I want to continue to do it forever.
That is
So that's my
amazing.
5 songs.
Love it. Love it. What's one thing you can't go a day without doing? Oh, sorry. Just hold on a sec.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll just try that again there.
Yeah.
I put all my stuff on Do Not Disturb, but apparently it didn't matter. All right. What's one thing you can't go a day without doing?
One thing I can't go without doing is getting up first thing in the morning, usually about sunrise, getting a cup of coffee, sitting outside and admiring the beauty that exists, whether it's trees, the sky, birds. I take 1 hour every morning. Every morning I do this, and I start the day simply recognizing and relishing the grandeur of life and how simple joy can be achieved by looking at a bird, feeling the breeze go by. And I think what it does is it starts my day off with such an optimistic sense of life that I'm going to go into anything I'm going to do in a really, really happy, positive mindset. And I've been doing it now for probably close to 2 years now. And I wake up every day happy. I mean, I really am so fortunate to feel so joyful. And I just think it's a lovely way to start the day. So that's something I do every day.
Nice. What's one thing you plan on doing in your life that you haven't yet?
So with all the craziness I've done, I became a private pilot, and I have my private pilot's license, but I haven't got my instrument rating yet. So ultimately, I want to complete that, and I want to slowly get back and have flying be a big part of my life. For those who have never flown a plane, it is a rush. It is a rush. It is a sense of power that's overwhelming. And I've actually had my 15-year-old daughter in the plane with me. And so you can kind of put it on cruise control for a little bit. There's autopilot. And I have chances where I've looked over and I look at her staring at the ground. We're at 3,000 to 4,000 feet. And she has her earbuds on. And she's listening to music, and I can just see the awe in her face of what's around her. And to be able to share that with her is really great. And I hate to say it, but landing a plane is a pretty amazing thing. The sense of control, and when you do it right and the wheels touch down right, it's incredible. So I definitely want to get back to that, hopefully in the next couple of months, and just make it a bigger part of my life.
Nice. Yeah, it definitely sounds like a rush for sure. Describe your perfect day.
This might sound goofy to people, but it's every day. Every day is a perfect day to me for the last 2 years. The only way to describe it is I'm drinking the cup of coffee. I am in the moment. It's the greatest cup of coffee I've ever tasted. I'm doing a podcast with you. It's the greatest podcast I've ever done. I'm fully in the moment. I'm enjoying talking to you and spreading the word. I go to work out. It's the greatest workout I've ever done because I'm fully engaged in it. I'm driving in my car listening to music. It doesn't really matter what I do. When you finally find that point at which you could be so fully engaged in the moment, you're experiencing every moment. You're not thinking about things which prevent you from experiencing the moment. So I feel very blessed that I've reached this point. And so I literally wake up kind of with my feet off the floor, and I kind of go to bed every night with my feet off the floor. I feel very fortunate. And so I'm lucky that I've gotten to the point where literally it's crazy, but every day is a great day. It's a perfect day.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's very lucky. I feel very blessed. And it's a part of my life that although this is the focus, people would be surprised. You get into these Zoom sessions with people, this is kind of going to come out a little bit because pain has such a strong emotional attachment to it. And I don't think I can really address someone's pain fully until I understand what is their emotional connection to it. And how do we begin to make them sense that maybe there's going to be a day in the future where pain is not going to be a part of their life and they can, just as I am, be free to experience every moment. So I usually have a little bit of the session involved in talking about the connection of emotion, spirit, intellect, all of it to the pain that they have. And so I feel very, again, fortunate that I've, in my personal life, found this freedom, and I kind of like to share it with people.
I love that. How do you inspire your clients to make the most of their lives?
I think it's recognizing that there's a lot of stuff that happens to people, bad stuff, health-related stuff, relationship-related stuff. I get it all. I was crippled for a decade after a lot of bad stuff happened to me. And I think the best way to inspire people is if you're looking at the trees, you're looking outside, you're recognizing clouds go by, and amazingly, another cloud comes by. You could see leaves dying, and you could see leaves growing. The cycle of life is constant. It's constantly flowing. You're going to go through bad times, but I promise you they will end. When you're going through good times, relish them because bad times are going to come again. And so if you could recognize that these things are all temporary, and the best way to stay in a healthy mindset is to kind of stay in the middle and say, hey, it's all good right now, and I'm happy and I'm relishing it. And when it's bad, say, okay, it stinks a little bit, but I know that's going to pass too. You got the best chance of experiencing the best in life. And that's kind of my message. I deal in pain. I mean, every person I deal with is pain. And it can be, I treated people, hundreds, who were suicidal, who literally came to me and said, you are my last resort. I will put a bullet in my head tomorrow. If this is it, I can't live another day like this. So I've become engrossed in the whole psychology of this stuff. Mm-hmm. I've had a decade of trauma, but thank God I found this path to enlightenment. And that enlightenment is what I really want to share with people, not just in resolving their pain, but knowing everything you're going through has closure. Because ultimately there is one final closure, and that's we die. Mm-hmm. And so no matter what you've gone through, at some point you're going to get there, and everything else isn't going to really matter at that point. So I inspire people, I believe, by making them see that they could live a phenomenal quality of life by keeping perspective and recognizing that control of the things that are around you are a lot more in your control than you really recognize. And the things that you can't control, let it go, man. Let it go. Just do what you could do to make yourself happy, and you're going to have a great life.
That's amazing. It totally resonates with me. Amazing. So you mentioned your website earlier. Do you have any social media we can follow you on?
So my YouTube channel is Dr. Mitchell Yass, and there's got to be a couple of hundred videos there. It's all free content. It's all application. So I've written articles. One of the big ones was on trigger finger, and it was for an organization called Bottom Line Health. And I get so many emails of people saying, I used the exercise, I resolved my pain. What kind of crazy person gives this information out for free and doesn't want to get paid for it? And the answer is because I'm more a scientist than I'm a businessman. And that's always been my joy. So I provide content constantly. So there's the website, there's the YouTube channel, Dr. Mitchell Yass. Facebook is the Yass Method. Instagram is live_without_pains. There's my blog on my website. The website, again, is livewithoutpains.com. I've written 3 books: Overpower Pain, The Pain Cure RX, The Yass Method for Pain-Free Movement. So there's lots and content available. And I would recommend anybody, if you feel you're concerned, you don't know if this is really viable for you and you want to look at things before you make an appointment for a Zoom session, definitely, to me, the YouTube channel is the best way. There's so much content there. And again, that's just Dr. Mitchell Yass.
Perfect. I'll make sure that's linked in the show notes as well.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah, that would be wonderful.
All right. Well, Mitchell, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate this. I think you've given us some great knowledge and things to think about.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me, and it's been a pleasure. And let's help everyone get out of pain. Everyone deserves to be there and to reclaim their lives and be happy. So thank you for having me.
One of the reasons I like asking the lightning round questions at the end of the episodes is that we usually get some great extra nuggets of information for improving our well-being and quality of life. I think Mitchell gave us two of them. So first, he mentioned that he lives in the moment, and obviously mindfulness is a huge part of his life and his well-being. And as I've said many, many times before on this podcast, it has improved mine and many others that I've seen as well. So just keep that in mind if you're not currently practicing any mindfulness. Second, he mentioned that pain has a strong emotional attachment to it. And this is very true. It's usually what stops us from being mindful. It often comes with depression and or anxiety. However, there are many ways to detach from that emotional attachment, like last week's episode on separating ourselves from our illness thoughts. Okay, so let's reflect. What did you notice about your thoughts and feelings as you listened to this episode? Particularly about pain being muscular in many cases. And what are you noticing now about that noticing? Everyone, thanks as always for tuning in. I hope this week you keep making the most of it. Special thanks to Marty for the original music and Charity Williams for the original artwork.